the good sisters are saying that they are having to compete with the bad girls to try to find a good man. In other words, the bad girls are doing all of the things that are going to get the attention of the brother that you might be interested in. So in order to compete, you are having to change your approach, maybe readjust your standards, and perhaps even go against your own values and morals in order to compete in a world where the bad girls outnumber the good girls. Is that right? And if I'm off base, please get your brother on track so that we can have this conversation the right way. If I am on track, I want to say this. It's not about whether or not you are a good sister. It's not even a matter of whether or not he is a good man. That's not really all that important. You know, whether or not you should date him or whether or not you should sleep with him or, my goodness, add a third person to your relationship. I'm hearing all kinds of ridiculousness out there. Whether or not you should entertain a man who is married but he says he's separated. Whether or not you should take up with a man who has 4 or 5 children already by as many women, babies, mamas, or exes, or what have you. You know, you guys, honestly, you're doing way too much, brothers and sisters. You're doing entirely too much. What I want you to do is stop down for a minute, take a deep breath, and think about what really is important to you, sister. I want you to stop down long enough to write down what's important to you. Get out of that rat race and write down what's really important to you, my sister. Now, there was a time you could say to a man who wanted to spend time with you, you could say, well, before you spend time with me, you have to first spend time with my father. Now, that was a rule of thumb back in the day, because as a village, you know, it was not acceptable to see a young lady walking around the neighborhood, if you will, with her stomach sticking out with no ring on her finger. The village would jump into action. Well, baby, what's going on with this here? And they point to her stomach, and they'll say, well, where is he? What's his name? You know, because at some point we need to find out who this brother is, and he needs to take responsibility for the consequences of his actions. And if not, then he's not going to be just coming in and out, disturbing the sanctity of the village. And so men were that important to the village. And so I say, sister, it's not so much as to whether or not you're a good sister. You don't have adequate backing. You don't have adequate backup. And I know some of you don't have your biological father present, or a man who could represent your father. He may not be present. You may not have access to him for whatever reason, and that's fine. I understand that. But before you go out, see what you've done, you flipped it. You started going out and meeting all these men, these multiple men, going out on all these dates, and then you finally pick one, and you're put under what you call pressure to either put out or otherwise, in order to be competitive with the girls who are putting out, just like when the conversations we had back when you were in high school. It's no different. But the thing is, you do this before he meets a man that is important to you, or you do these things before you introduce the brother to a man with whom you are important to. Whether it's an uncle, whether it's a member of your church, an older brother, a deacon, or a pastor for that matter, you would have already had a full-blown relationship with a man who has not even looked at a man who says to him, this one is mine and we gonna do right by her. You just don't know how far that goes, sister. You don't know how far that goes. What I am suggesting to you is, for those of you who don't have access to a man who could stand in your father's absence. You know, we all have these questions that we could say, ask the man this and ask him that, but let me let you in on a little secret. My dear, sweet sister, if the man that is interested in you does not want to answer a list of the following questions in front of a man who sees you as somewhat of a daughter to him, then that man needs to keep it moving. See, it's not enough for you to ask the following questions. Are you honest? You ask the brother. You ask him, are you married? And he'll give you an answer. You'll ask him, are you being honest with me? And he'll give you an answer. You might ask him, do you have children? If so, how many? You'll ask him, if he does have children, tell me about your children. You'll go through this whole song and dance. Do you have pictures of your children? How often do you see them? And how is your relationship with the children's mother? Do you have a job? You can ask all of these questions. I'm going somewhere with this. Please be patient with me. How do you feel about sex out of wedlock? How do you feel about marriage? You might ask the brother. Do you plan to marry anytime soon? How do you feel about family? And what about things like abortion and these kinds of questions? You ever been convicted of a crime? And what advice do you give your single friends? You might even ask him, do you have a clean health and or criminal record? It's not enough just to ask these questions anymore, sister. These questions need to be asked in front of a man who sees you as special to him. A man who, when he looks at the brother, we have this built-in mechanism as men. This is what's valuable about a father and what's valuable about men. We have a built-in mechanism. We can tell whether or not the dude is shaking and faking. We can determine whether he's a chump. We have a built-in instinctive chumpometer, if you will. A man has that. And he brings that to the conversation with any man who's trying to take up with his daughter. You need, sister, to get that kind of man. I don't know where you're going to find him. I don't know if he's a friend of yours. I don't know if he's a friend of a friend. But I'm sure that there is a man who sees you as something special and something valuable, and he wants something good for you, and he wants the right brother in your life. Now, if you have a pastor, if you have some elders at the church that could represent that, utilize those brothers. That's what it's for. Bring the village back to the table. Instead of running around trying to figure this thing out on your own, it's not in you to figure it out, sister. That's why the tradition was that the father gives the daughter away to the groom after he grants permission to the groom. And I hope that this makes sense to you, because when you take the father out of the picture, when you take the man who represents the father out of the picture, you are left on your own. And you don't have the instinctiveness to determine whether or not this man should even be in front of you. Now, we always I hear women saying, that they have a gay male friend who can determine, you say he has a gaydar, and he can determine whether or not a man is a real man through and through. Well, now, if you're going to give him credit for having a gaydar, then you need to give a man who is not gay credit for having a chumpometer, so that we can help you sift and sort out the suckers so that they don't stand in front of you as if they done played this game so well that they can pull it over on someone that I love. Let me put it this way. So there you go. You know I'm only here to help, because I only want for you what I want for myself. I want you guys to be happy. I want you to be healthy. I want you to live a life of longevity. But above all these things combined, I wish upon you many, many blessings. Always looking forward to your response. And as always,